Productive Pastor 113, how to get the calendar controlled. What's going on, friends? Welcome back to Productive Pastors. Chad Brooks. This place online, we talk about healthy ministry through strategic productivity. Y'all, what's July been like for you? July's been awesome for me, also wild. Got to take some fantastic vacation with the fam. Also started this new season of ministry for me, working full-time inside of a denominational system, not local church pastoring. I've talked about that some. And a little bit of this episode is kind of about some of the things I'm learning, put that in the present tense, but also just kind of, I was not on for a week. I had a little round with the COVID-19 yet again. It's going through the place right now. I had to take some time off because trust me, you did not want to hear me on a microphone last week at all. But we're back here coming in, continuing this short series of these basic core productivity practices. And this episode's about the calendar. This episode's about getting that calendar controlled. Because that's one of the first steps that a lot of people, when I talk with them about, their own ministry productivity, the calendar is a place we spend a lot of time talking about. I've learned a lot about how pastors either use or don't use a calendar lately. And then also for me, I talk a lot about competency development. I'm having to learn some new competencies right now because ministry is changing a lot. And what I'm finding out is the calendar is an absolute essential tool, even 15 times more important than I used to think it was. Some of those lessons are popping in here too, but we're just going to jump straight into the content about how to keep that calendar controlled. So let's go straight into it. Number one, you got to commit to the calendar. You got to commit to the thing. Very rarely do I talk to anybody who does not keep a calendar whatsoever at all, but a lot of times we think the calendar is kind of like the catalytic converter in our car. We're never aware of it until somebody gets underneath it and steals it with a Sawzall, or until there's a problem. I remember in college, I had a car that just rattled and made so much noise, and for years, I got to the point I was actually embarrassed to pull up to drive-thrus, and it was my catalytic converter. Now, it was expensive back then, but I was blown away when I changed the catalytic converter. So many things in the car quit. It started working so much better. And we think the calendar like that. It's this thing we kind of have to have, but we might neglect it as a strategic tool in our ministry productivity toolbox. The first thing we have to do is have to keep a commitment to the calendar. And there's a commitment to timelines. There's a commitment in ministry to timeliness. I'm learning that so much, and I've had to coach and work with other pastors as they've learned that so many ways, that we have just a commitment to timeliness inside of ministry. And that means we have to have a commitment to the calendar, to what that's going on. And so you have to make an agreement with yourself. The very first step is this agreement that I'm going to be in my calendar. We're going to talk more about that later on in the episode. Still got a little bit of that coffee there. Okay. But it's about saying, I'm going to use this calendar. I'm going to use it to the fullest extent of the ability that I have. And I'm going to make sure that I'm doing it in a way that's causing a healthy ministry through my own strategic productivity. Now, I'm not going to go into which app you should use or which app you shouldn't use. I'm not going to lie. I've done a bit of Googling lately to see if I need to move off of the iCal, but I'm still rocking it. It's still there. Notion has a calendar feature right now, which I'm intrigued about, but Notion overall doesn't intrigue me that much. But yes, just curious, but don't get bogged down in what tool to use, but make sure you're using a calendar. And I'm a fan of a digital one unless you're going to keep the paper calendar in your pocket at all times. But, what you want to come into is you're going to, realize that you are just going to be inside of that. Now, a couple of things, what that means if you agree to use your calendar is when you set a date for something, that means that your next step needs to automatically be, let me go and put that in the calendar. Let me avoid double booking. Let me avoid overloading myself. If I agree to do something the moment it's agreed upon, I'm going to go and put it in my calendar. I'm going to get the right time in there. I'm going to put the notes I might need to, like where's this meeting going to take place? Where am I meeting this person at? If it's a Zoom call, I'm going to put the link inside of the information feature. Or if it's giving somebody a call on their phone, I'm going to put their phone number in that as well, unless it's a person I call constantly, to know I've got that number saved in there. One of the reasons I love Calendly so much, and I use Calendly for a lot of things, is that it automatically embeds that Zoom link or the phone number that's in there. And so that might be the only tool tip I give you for this episode, is look at tools like Calendly that allow you to kind of schedule up blocks so other people can grab a time if they need to meet with you or talk with you. If you're in local church ministry, and if you're trying to figure out, how much pastoral care or one-on-one or access time do you have, an easy way to do that is to grab a tool like Calendly, set up a known block inside of your schedule. And if someone says, hey, I'd like to meet with you, say, hey, let me send you this link real quick. Anytime inside of there is 100% okay with me, and I would love to meet with you. Older folks might feel that to be a little icky, and I'm right there at the age to where if I did not realize how useful this tool was, if somebody else did that to me, I might be a little perturbed. But I know that it has changed the way I schedule people so much, because half the time I found myself neglecting tasks that involved scheduling with people because I didn't like the email back and forth. Now I just send them a link, say, hey, grab a time right here, and I'll be there. It's just right there. The next thing that I think that's kind of part of that is if you are doing some of this back and forth by email or by text, at the very end, just confirm. How many times you might have missed something because a person was assuming that the meeting was confirmed? Or how many times you missed something because you assumed the meeting was confirmed? If part of ministry is a commitment to timeliness, these are the tiny little bitty things that make big, huge differences. So that's the first thing about, keeping your calendar, getting your calendar controlled, is just a commitment to the calendar. Second thing is this: go in there and block out your recurring things. What repeats itself in your schedule every week, every other week, every month, quarter, that sort of stuff. Go in and build that stuff in there. Or it kind of goes back to that last thing. When meetings get called, go stick it in your calendar. Earlier this week, I went back and some of the folks I work with, we have a yearly meeting calendar, and I pulled up, it took me like 10 minutes to do the total thing, but it was a long doc. It was like a 10-page doc, and I was only supposed to be part of certain things of it, but I went through and dropped every one of those meetings onto my calendar, so I know not to schedule something on there, and that meeting is not in my town, so I built a buffer time for travel that was in there and all of that. But if you've got a recurring thing, go and stick that in your calendar so you know. Then also you have known blocks. If you're in pulpit ministry, what is the sermon preparation time you have? Or when do you have staff meetings? That sort of stuff. Go ahead and schedule that stuff in your calendar to fill the time up. We're going to talk more about that in the back end of the episode. Also, if you're a church that still has Wednesday night ministry, go in there and block out some time on Wednesdays, because I remember when I was at a church with Wednesday night ministry, the Wednesday afternoon time was just really weird and funky, and I would get myself involved in things that would burn a lot of energy. And then the next thing you know, I had to be on for 3 hours when the church was open and all sorts of stuff was going on. And I may or may not be teaching, or I might end up in a pastoral conversation with somebody, all of that. So when you have these known blocks that are going to take up time and space and energy, just go ahead and block those off. That's what you're doing. You're reserving that time for the energy you might need for the future. The next thing that's coming up in this conversation is know when to say no. That's huge. You've got to know when to say no. One of the reasons I've been so busy lately is I said yes to some things like in March or April and May because I didn't know what the rest of the year was going to look like. And these are things I'm excited to do, but these are things that take time to get done. And I have a list. When I filled out my kind of weekly review every week for the last month, one of the things I have in there is don't start anything new, say no 3 times this week. The things that you have to do, it builds in your awareness of what you need to be focusing on, and to know when you need to say no to things. And you can create your own filter of what's priority, what's going to automatically get a yes, that sort of thing. But ministry is a really, really different ballgame now. And a lot of times you might be getting some outside requests, and some of those would be really good to do. Some of them would be fun to do, but not the best thing to do right now. Know when you need to say no. Here's also a tip as part of that. If you become the I will schedule this person, and you develop that calendar discipline, the commitment to the calendar, the commitment to timeliness, and you become the, hey, let's get this scheduled right now person, what's going to be so interesting is that means that you are in control of your calendar not someone else. If we're always waiting for somebody else to fill up our schedule will be filled by other people and other priorities. So part of this whole knowing when to say no is part of the commitment to a calendar. So think about that. If you're the person who pushes towards scheduling, towards firm dates, towards firm yeses, all of that sort of stuff, you are going to be in control of your calendar. And when you're in control of your calendar, that's going to allow you to say yes and to say no in really, really different ways, in ways that might be a lot more healthy for you. The last part of this is this: just look at your calendar. Don't let it be the catalytic converter, okay? Don't just save it. Don't just know, oh, it's there. Let me check my calendar real quick. Look at it. Use it. Allow it to be part of your strategic ministry productivity. Remember, this is all about creating healthy ministry through strategic productivity, not about having full ministry or big ministry or growing ministry or great ministry. Healthy ministry. We do that through being aware of these sorts of things. Be aware of what it looks like when a week starts to get really wild. Be aware of what it looks like when a day starts to get really wild. I know next week I've got a day that's going to be an absolute booger. And it's like halfway full, but the things that are filling it up halfway are boogers. So I know now, hey, don't schedule anything else that day. And also be very aware of what you think you're going to get done that day, because you're going to be tired. Your mind is going to be tired. And I'm going to have to be on like early in the morning and also late in the afternoon, which is really difficult. So be inside of your calendar and use your calendar as one of those tools. Calendar awareness might be the biggest thing you can do to keep your calendar under control. Is just aware of your calendar, aware of your energy, aware of your time, and aware of how you do things. And that kind of leads to the closing bit here. Is you need to plan for necessary margin. If you were leaving town, how many times have you crammed in like some super, super full day the day before you leave town? Or you don't have that much time to leave town, but you have to go to something, and then the next day back is just going to be full tilt boogie. Neither one of those are really healthy things. And so, intentionally think about on-ramps and off-ramps for when you're going to be out of town. I know we're kind of ending vacation season for ministry, but for many of us, ministry is also a job that has us traveling a little bit, going to conferences, going to meetings, going to trainings, that sort of stuff. Or you just might be having to, take a day to do study retreats, something like that. Plan for those leavings and coming backs and give yourself the necessary margin inside of that. Also think about the big seasons of ministry coming up. I know that for many pastors, the Advent season is just nuts. So try to make November a little bit chiller. And if you're aware of your calendar, if you're living inside of your calendar, if you're using it as a strategic tool, you will be able to be building in that margin. You might need a bit more margin than you normally do inside of there. Calendars can be a huge resource. Calendars can be one of the best tools that we have. So much my own refinement right now is all about how I'm managing my time with and through my calendar. So it's kind of like a smattering of tips about getting your calendar under control, but hopefully you picked up some stuff. You might be a calendar Jedi, and if that's the case, you learned one thing, it'd be cool. Let me know what that is. Hit me back on the socials or pop into Productive Pastor Community on Facebook and let that know. Or you might be like in a super, super chaos mode and you're like, Chad, my first step has to be my calendar, and I would probably agree with you. But that's how we get our calendar under control. We're going to be coming back in the next episode, kind of wrapping up this basic productivity focus, talking about communication. Communication's huge. Communication is everything. I think communication is this era's program ministry. Can't wait to come on and to talk about that with you. So I'll see you back in the next episode. Thanks for listening.